Africa has long been a continent of promise and potential, with the aspirations for democratic governance, constitutionalism, and the protection of human rights. However, these aspirations have been under threat in recent years, and the continent has witnessed a worrying surge in military coups and the rise of military regimes. A military coup, short for coup d'etat, is a sudden and often violent seizure of political power by military or a faction within the military. It typically involves the overthrow of existing government or leadership, frequently including the president or head of state. A military regime emerges following a military coup, and this becomes a form of government where the military, led by a group of senior officers, assumes direct control over the country's administration. In a military regime, the military exercises executive, legislative, and sometimes judicial powers. Out of the 486 attempts or successful military coups carried out globally since 1950, Africa accounts for the largest number, with 214, of which at least 106 have been successful. This alarming trend in the rise of military regimes in Africa poses a significant challenge to the future of democratic governance for the continent. In this very video, we explore the rise of military regimes in Africa, focusing on the historical context, causes, consequences, and potential solution to the rise of military regimes on the continent. For decades, the military has been known for its main function of protecting the state. However, in current reality, it is glaring that the preoccupation of these institutions is to hijack and assume control of governmental powers. Regrettably, they should never have existed in the first place, especially in democratic states. According to Colpu's data set, Africa has experienced 222 coup attempts compared to other parts of the world for over 60 years. In 2022, over 40 regions of the 54 countries witnessed one or more coup attempts, with Sudan having the highest number in Africa's world history. This custom is in fact outdated, condemnable in all aspects, and undemocratic, hence this call for serious attention. It is not only sudden that the undemocratic change in government is fueled by a harsh economy, but it is also propelled and hindered by bad and despotic leadership. Recently, there have been 2 military coups out of the 17 states that make up West Africa. This is an indication that democracy is descending from the pinnacle of its leaders. On the 30th of August 2023, a military coup surfaced in Gabon, leaving people with lurking questions as to whether such would surface anytime soon in Nigeria and other neighboring countries. This followed a precedent laid down by the Niger Republic on July the 26th of 2023, where there was a military coup which had toppled the attention of ECOWAS nation states. Similarly, on January the 24th of 2022, a group of soldiers led by Paul Henry Damiba, the commander of the third military regime, overthrew the president of Burkina Faso. Damiba accused Christians of failing to protect the country from terrorist attacks. Notably, the major fuel for the fire of military coups in Africa is leveled on perceived leadership failure to build the country in line with the people's aspiration, which has in fact unreceptiveness by the people. It is however right and safe to say that military rule should not be encouraged. Against this background, you will agree with me that there are no actions without consequences, just that there are no problem without their causes. This is natural. The illegal possession and excesses of power is innate and is recorded in holy books. It's glaring that the increase in armament and military intervention has reduced, though there is a delicate balance of simultaneous motion of this, mostly in African countries. While a coup d'etat may have been the people's choice for a long time, it is however undesirable to witness and should never be promoted. There are many known and yet unknown problems associated with military coups in Africa. Most of these are primarily characterized by the charismatic qualities of leaders, either positively or negatively. The first and most glaring reason for a military takeover in any state is based on government and power. Other reason revolves primarily around economic instability. grievous human rights abuses, corruption, and regional instability. It is crucial to state that the government in power may be the main cause of military rule. In most instances, military coup occur as reasons to government policies as contained in the Archive of History. On January the 15th of 1966, the first military coup was held in Nigeria. The reason for this coup can be tied to a breakdown in leadership, since so many leaders in Africa viewed politics as a means of amassing wealth rather than serving the people. This phenomenon isn't isolated to Nigeria alone. It is passive and innate in everyone's bloodstream. When obligations are turned into structural business, establishment problems inevitably emerged. Thus, unreliable and corrupt public leaders are among the root causes of military coups. However, the system operating within a territory only reduces the intensity of the manifestation of such selfish desire. On the other hand, the pragmatic approach towards solving this problem involves having good and visionary leaders in government. Leaders who are probably elected by the majority through a transparent, independent electoral commission. While this is desirable, this is only applicable in theory. Almost everyone clamors for good leaders, but not always prepared to pay the price. If any part of the election process lacks transparency, the people should reject such a candidate promptly. This is one of the ways of cultivating good and visionary leaders, of which harvest will be bountiful. Secondly, military coups also spread through a nation's lifeline via one of the characteristics, which is contagious in nature. Military coups are contagious and can spread across borders like an endless ocean. This is because coup makers are often influenced or inspired by recent coup attempts. We witnessed this phenomenon in 2021 in Guinea on September the 5th, in Sudan on September the 21st, and in other cases in 2022, such as Burkina Faso on January the 24th, Guinea-Bissau on February the 1st, Burkina Faso again on September the 30th, and Sao Tome and Principe on November the 25th of 2022. Upon closer examination of the interval between these incidents, it becomes apparent, audible to the deaf and visible to the blind, that these leaders are influenced by coups that are called in neighboring countries. With similar economic situations, this problem persists in Africa and the world at large. The lasting solution to this is to highly discourage military coups among soldiers, and the people's history should be taught in schools. This way, future leaders will understand the consequences and any potential advantages for the nation and its citizen, if any. Moreover, in recent times, after a coup, international organizations and world leaders urged the military leaders to return power to the civilian government. From a certain standpoint, this is desirable, but to some extent, impracticable. You might ask me how. First, what would be the fate of the people and the armed forces after immediately handing over power to the elected government? Does that necessarily mean that the government will adapt to changes? In honest view, I would suggest that if the people support the military administration, it should rule for a good 6 months, followed by a general election at the end of its tenure, with a mandated law barring previous public officers, including the president, from contesting in any election. This is designed to assess the core values of leaders' righteousness, be it good or bad. Africa does not witness military coups because it's Africa, but because it's poor. Many African countries that have recently witnessed military coups are among the poorest in Africa. Thus, poverty, a product of a stagnant economy, is one of the factors contributing to military rule. Factors show that numerous people are suffering in Africa due to bad leaders and followers. Many of us are where we are today because of actions and inactions we took or forgot to take at a point in time, and where we will be tomorrow depends on the action we take today. Therefore, the long-lasting solution to poverty is a buoyant economic supported by good, transparent, and visionary leadership. The problem does not stem from the absence of support from international organizations, but rather that these supports are not reaching the right beneficiaries. Instead, those in power circumvent and accumulate the incentives, benefits only the privileged few in the country. In this video, we call on different international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other entities to diligently monitor the distribution channels of all incentives provided to African countries. With all that said, painstakingly and reviewed, I am assured that the lifespan of military rule in Africa will be shortened to the barest minimum. Now again, to understand the current situation regarding military regime in Africa, it is crucial to investigate the historical context. The continent has a complex history of post-colonial struggles for power, and military intervention in politics has been a recurring theme. Many African nations gained independence from colonial rule only to find themselves grappling with internal power struggles that often led to military takeovers. For instance, Ghana, one of the first African countries to gain independence in 1957, experienced multiple military coups in the following decades. The first was in 1966 when Kwame Nkrumah was removed from power, and in the following year there was an unsuccessful attempt by junior army officers. This event set a precedent to military intervention in politics in other African countries, demonstrating how a legacy of instability can persist. As amply articulated by Peter Moore, the 2023 takeover in Gabon is the latest in a string of coups that has taken place in recent years and comes just a month after soldiers took control in Niger. In 2021, there were 6 coup attempts in Africa, 4 of them successful, and in 2017, in Zimbabwe, a military takeover brought Robert Mugabe's 37-year rule to an end. The list goes on and on. Sudan holds the record for the highest number of coups and attempted coups, totaling 18, out of which 6 were successful. In West Africa, Ruth McLean recorded that Burkina Faso has witnessed the most successful coups, with 9 takeovers and 1 failed attempt. Consequences of military coups for African nations are far-reaching and often profoundly damaging. Military regimes tended to suppress civilian liberties and political dissent, enrich the rule of law, and undermine constitutionalism. Human rights abuses frequently escalate under military rule, with opposition leaders, activists, and journalists often becoming targets. Case studies from countries like Sudan, Mali highlight the devastating impacts of military coups in democratic governance. In Sudan, a coup in 2019 ousted long-time president, leading to ongoing instability, economic crisis, and human rights abuses. Mali, a nation that has experienced multiple coups in recent years, also faces significant challenges in restoring democratic governance and stability. An often overlooked yet significant factors that contributes to coup in several African countries is the president for life phenomenon. This phenomenon is pervasive when a president alters the constitution to extend, remove, or otherwise modify term limits, or when they interpret the constitution to ensure an extended tenure in power. A recent article by Good Governance Africa revealed that presidential term limits debates and attack are evident in a number of African countries, among them Rwanda, Comoros, Central African Republic, Uganda, Burkina Faso, Senegal, Cameroon, Congo, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. The invasion of term limits has broader consequences for democratic governance in Africa to the extent of triggering military rules. Transferring from military rule back to democracy is a complex and delicate process. The legacy of a coup can leave deep scars, making it challenging to rebuild trust in democratic institutions. Restoring constitutionalism and human rights can be an audacious task, as military regimes often dismantle or weaken these safeguards during their rule. Preventing military coup in Africa requires a multi-pronged approach, strengthening democratic institutions, improving governance, and addressing economic inequalities and crucial steps. Additionally, regional organizations must continue to develop and enforce mechanisms to deter and respond to coup attempts effectively. Civil society, the media, and education can also play pivotal roles in promoting democracy and holding governments accountable. By fostering a culture of democratic values and civic engagement, and civic engagement. These actors can help build resilience against the threats of military coups and regimes in Africa. The rise of military regimes in Africa is a concerning trend that threatens the progress made towards democracy, constitutionalism, and human rights on the continent. Understanding the historical context, cause, consequences, and potential solutions is essential in addressing this challenge. While there are no easy answers, concerted efforts from African nations and the international community and civil society are necessary to safeguard the future of democratic governance in Africa. The continent's people deserve the opportunity to choose their leaders through ballots and not bullets. Thank you so much for watching this video on Frank Speaks, a call for a wake-up for the entire people of Africa, leaders, the people, and international communities. Attitudinal change is needed in Africa. Thank you for watching, and do remember to like, drop a comment, and also subscribe.